Welcome to the first of Brown&Co's virtual farm walks. Today we're here on a farm in South West Norfolk and we'll be covering topics including root cropping, collaboration, environmental stewardship, specialist cropping and solar energy, all from a socially safe distance.
Hi, my name's Abby and I'm here on Grange Farm this afternoon. Grange Farm lies partially within the SSSI of the Breckland farmland and also within the SPA of Breckland. This farm has had success like many other farms in the area with breeding stone curlews, the skylarks as well. This farm has managed their habitat through the high level stewardship scheme, which comes to an end next year. So this farm, as many others, will be offered an HLS extension for 1 year, as countryside stewardship agreements have also been this year. Now, whether or not to make that decision is something that needs some careful consideration. In terms of environmental delivery, all of the options and management prescriptions that have been met through HLS can also be met through countryside stewardship. So environmental delivery isn't necessarily a consideration. But what we should be thinking about is practicality, liability and income. In terms of practicality, you need to ask yourself if decisions made on the farm 5 to 10 years ago are still applicable today. Some smaller options, such as wild bird mixes that are non-rotational, can become rotational with permission requested from Natural England. However, the decision to have, say, 40 hectares of overwinter stubble that you can't spray off now comes into conflict with the farm's decision to have 40 hectares of fodder crop that needs to be grazed in order to bring livestock into the rotation. Changes in kit, contractor and cropping can all cause you to want to refresh your high-level stewardship scheme into a countryside stewardship scheme. We also need to be thinking about liability. With these high-level stewardship schemes, you extend for a year, but if an RPO inspector was to come out and find that the wonderful grass margin that was supposed to create a tiered habitat from your hedge down into your crop is now being used by the gamekeeper for access, or by local residents for a dog walk, that one option prescription infringement, say if you were short by 0.1 of a hectare over a hectare floristic margin, would cause you a £1,000 fine, because the fines don't only apply for that year, they go back to the very beginning of the agreement. So if we're talking an 8-year scheme, that's fine, but with the year extension we're looking at 11 years that the fines would go back to. So maybe you should be looking at going into a 1-year countryside stewardship agreement. Lastly, we have income. Now, some schemes through high-level stewardship are better paying, staying in a high-level stewardship scheme. For example, grassland schemes pay better, especially if you were looking at creation options. Under a creation option through high-level stewardship, you could be paid £400 to £500 a hectare, whereas in countryside stewardship, because you've now created that habitat, that payment drops to maybe £95 or £100 a hectare. So you're better to keep in with that high-level stewardship creation payment. However, conversely, with arable options, they are much more lucrative in countryside stewardship. We have the classic options of wild bird mixes. They pay £640 a hectare plus a supplementary uplift for supplementary feeding. And if you're looking at £70 a hectare for seed cost and £110 a hectare for establishment, your gross margin's coming in at about £450 a hectare. And again, with cultivated areas like these in front of me, what is actually the establishment of these? There's no seed cost, and if you've got the kit and the man-hours already here cultivating the land, the establishment cost is very minimal, and these are coming in at £532 a hectare. My take-home message from today is that there is not one broad-brushed approach to decide on whether you should go for an HLS extension or a countryside stewardship agreement. Each decision will be based on your own farming business and your own choices for your future cropping, and decisions made 10 or 5 years ago may not be applicable for today.
Hi, I'm Ed, and I'm going to talk a little bit about renewable energy and solar power in particular. The world's entire electricity requirements for a whole year are satisfied, or would be satisfied, by the amount of energy that hits the surface of the earth every hour. It's an incredible piece of information that requires us to look at how we're going to capture it. It's not an issue of the fact that there isn't the availability of the energy. The problem we face is being able to capture it and store it and use it for commercial purposes. The use of solar panels to convert sunlight into electricity has been around for decades. We've really only seen the commercial applications of utility scale, field scale solar, enough to cover a field like this, sort of at the start of the previous decade, where incentivised by subsidies from the government to kickstart this new green industry. We had interest from developers from all sorts of places wanting to capitalise on the opportunity to produce green electricity. The green movement had started, demand from investors was there, and they needed to bring together the land, the planning expertise, the capital and the construction capabilities, and bring all that together with grid in order to create a viable project. And grid is everything. Where these projects start are to identify where in the grid there is capacity for a new connection. And then once that work has been done with the distribution network operator, then the developer can get to work and try and identify a site that they believe will stand the best chance of getting through planning. And they will follow that process through. And where a firm like Brown&Co has been able to help in the past in our successful projects has been to manage the relationship between landowner and developer to bring each of those 5 assets together into a viable scheme. Certainly from the investor's point of view and the city and the funds that provide the capital for construction, there is huge appetite, we think, in the economy and the country as a whole at the moment for renewable electricity and for renewable energy. If we're all going to be driving autonomous electric vehicles in 5, 10, 15 years' time, you can really only complete that circle by powering those electric vehicles with renewable electricity. And so a combination of solar along with wind and AD, tidal and other renewable electricities is needed to bring it all together. And tractors even will be powered by electricity and battery power before too long, I have no doubt. Somebody, a landowner, a property owner interested in becoming part of the green revolution and using some of their property for renewable energy purposes has 2 options. One is letting land for a large-scale, utility-scale solar development. The other option is self-invested rooftop developments, which vary in scale from 3 or 4 kilowatts maybe on a domestic house rooftop up to 50 or 100 kilowatts on rooftop, depending on the size of roof available. And a self-invested rooftop scheme is all about offsetting, really. It's not so much about how much money you can make by producing and selling electricity. It's more about how much money you can save by not having to buy electricity from the grid. So if you're a high energy user, if you're running cold stores in particular for the whole year, or have some other high base load of power that you can use renewable electricity for, then you need to try and identify what that threshold is and choose a scale and size of project which meets that base load. And that way you are using as much as you possibly can, which gives you the greatest savings, and having to export and sell as little as possible, which is, whilst that gives you an extra revenue stream, the big savings are certainly offsetting in the first instance. And again, if you want to export, then you have to have that grid connection again. Grid is key to all of this.
Hi, I'm Jamie from Norwich Land Agency, and I'm going to talk to you about third-party cropping arrangements on farms today. It's quite common now for farmers to use third-party occupiers to spread risk, supplement income and diversify their businesses. Commonly this is through cropping licences, and this is for veg and salads, but also there are farm business tenancies for more permanent arrangements, which include soft fruits, outdoor pigs, and latterly we've seen turf production and planting of trees for carbon offsetting. For specialist veg crops such as these onions, we would recommend using a cropping licence. In basic terms, this allows a third party to establish, manage and harvest a crop, but grants no permanent rights or estates to them. The farmer is still in occupation, claims the basic payment scheme and the environmental stewardship, and the licence agreement sets out the obligations and, most importantly, indemnifies the farmer or the landowner against any breaches of cross-compliance. A licence agreement is perfectly acceptable for short-term arrangements. However, should you want to grant a more permanent right, we would suggest using a farm business tenancy. So a farm business tenancy is different to a licence, as it does grant the tenant a permanent estate or legal right to occupy the land for the term of the agreement. Generally you tend to see this for outdoor pigs or longer than 11-month arrangements. With an FBT, the entitlements are generally transferred to the tenant and they claim the basic payment scheme. Therefore there's no risks of cross-compliance breaches on behalf of the landlord. For environmental stewardship, this can either be transferred to the tenant or the landlord can continue to claim it, but there needs to be an exchange of paperwork to set out the management obligation. Where you have a farm business tenancy agreement for more than 2 years, it is important to be aware of the protection that can come under the Agricultural Tenancies Act. If you don't serve notice 12 months prior to the end of that agreement, the tenant can remain in occupation for an additional 12 months. So why do these arrangements need to be properly documented? Well, like everything, it really only matters when something goes wrong. And if that's the case, you can refer to the FPT or the license agreement, and it will set out the obligations to each party, deal with reinstatement, insurance, repairs, maintenance. So what's the going rate? In Norfolk, where I practice, we tend to see a range of about £300 to £450 per acre for veg cropping on licence. The variance depends on the availability of water, the type of crop and the location. For outdoor pigs, on a farm business tenancy, the rate's between £300 and £400 per acre, but with the tenant claiming the basic payment scheme. And we often see a lot of anaerobic digester maize also on licence at about £150 per acre, again with the farmer or landowner claiming the basic payment scheme. And don't always rely on a handshake. Despite what the agreement may say at the top, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you'll end up with. For example, if you grant an occupier a licence, but they occupy that land exclusively for more than 11 or 12 months, they could quite easily claim a tenancy, and then you're into a whole different ballgame.
Hi, I'm Tim, and I'll be covering the key topics around sugar beet production. So, sugar beet has been a mainstay of arable farming in East Anglia for generations now, and here on this farm we're within 5 miles of the sugar beet factory, and it's been a good performer on the farm. What the things to consider really now, we've moved away from the halcyon days of £40 a tonne for sugar beet, and we're getting tighter margins, so it's all about crop performance. Prices are considered sort of taken away out of our control, although there is a little bit of variation each year, but so therefore it's all really about maximising yield and yield potential. We're looking really on a field like this to be generating a gross margin of close to £2,000 a hectare if we can, and that means where the prices are at the moment, just somewhere around the £22 a tonne mark, to be getting yields in excess of 80 tonnes a hectare. To do that, we need to consider a number of factors agronomically, but also where it fits into the rotation. So as well as crop performance, I think considering rotational impact is vital. This fits onto this farm quite well because we have it's a good spring break, but we need to make sure that we consider the impact on soils or the impact on the machinery that we use on the farm, as well as just producing the maximum gross margins per hectare. The third consideration really is the risk factor. Sugar beet has been a constant performer for many farms in Eastern region, but now we are losing the neonicotinoid seed treatment, and we're losing active ingredients in terms of the chemical control of weeds and other things. So we've got to make sure we understand the risk of growing these crops, not just assuming that we're going to be yielding 80 plus tonnes a hectare every year. So all those factors combined make this crop a good performer at the moment, but we need to make sure we assess the risk on an annual basis before committing and growing the crop. So key take-home messages will be understanding the crop performance and how that's going to contribute to the bottom line, assessing where sugar beet fits into the rotation, and ensuring that we understand the risks that growing this crop has with losing the active ingredients in the chemical battle against the weeds.
Hello there, my name's Rob, and I'm going to talk for a moment or two about collaborating at an on-farm level. So put your hand up if you're collaborating already. That's good. Some of you are well into it, others a little bit shy. But you may be collaborating with machinery, you may be collaborating with some grain storage arrangements, you may even be sharing labour. There are plenty of forms of collaboration. You may be pooling management expertise, you may be sharing a sheep flock or a beef herd, or working together somehow in the collaboration on a dairy unit. Some collaborations may be very informal and others more structured and long-term. There's plenty of ways to address the issue. The entry point to an effective collaboration can be hard to find. How does one share a challenge with someone else? So often the opportunity arises as a consequence of informal conversations, either with a neighbour or perhaps a trusted advisor. And the ball starts to roll from there. Conversations evolve into sharing experiences, and they forge bonds and the possibilities for future discussions. Don't expect everything to happen as a consequence of your very first conversation and concern. But in any event, those conversations open up doors and bring changes perhaps in thought processes and ways of doing things, and in themselves are positive, even if they don't go much further. Collaboration may come about for any number of reasons, and solutions can often be found by 2 or 3 businesses working together with equal but opposite challenges. One may be concerned about succession, the other may have a robust family or team structure that delivers for the longer term. One may be wishing to do less, another may be wishing to do more. One may be long on fixed capital and short on management, and the other may be a very bright young starter who has a shortage of cash. There are numerous reasons why people collaborate, but it's true to say that age, capital preservation and management pressures are the most significant drivers. Increasingly so is the need, no longer a desire, to access the best available management in your area, to boost your business's performance, and also to aid the affordability of access to technology. Scale tends to aid both of those measures. Collaboration isn't about fear and defeat and loss of autonomy. Collaboration is about gripping your present challenges and finding effective long-term solutions working with others. So what makes for a good collaboration? Obviously there's a requirement for a well thought through and properly documented financial mechanism. It will be wise to document the complete terms of your agreement with somebody else, without doubt. But the key drivers to effective collaboration are chemistry and trust. Between the parties, no chemistry and no trust equals no success. Collaborate with the right people at the right time and those who have complementary skills and ambitions to yours, and you'll collaborate to great effect for the long term. But if you miss those vital human factors, chase the pound and miss the person, it would be a far less enjoyable experience for you.
Thank you for watching. We hope you found this tour informative. If you'd like any advice on the topics covered or have any queries in particular, please find your local contact at brown-co.com.